Chapter 2. How to Know the Truth. The discovery of the subconscious mind and its extraordinary powers over the outer mind and the body is turning new light on many subjects, and we can safely predict that the understanding of the subconscious will in the near future practically revolutionize all thought and all method of mental, moral, and spiritual training. The fact that you can impress anything upon the subconscious, and that all such impressions will react as corresponding expressions, is creating the most profound attention among all progressive thinkers, not only because it pens to the mind an immense field of most fascinating study, but also because it explains hundreds of phenomena that have hitherto baffled all attempts at solution. Among the many mysteries that are explained by subconscious study, few are of greater interest than that of the origin of ideas, or what might be termed beliefs and convictions. Many a person asks himself daily why he believes what he does, and why he is convinced that certain things are true when he has no evidence. If our convictions always prove themselves to be true, this matter might not attract much attention. But the fact that so many convictions sooner or later prove themselves to be untrue or mere illusions makes the subject one of more than passing importance. What we believed yesterday we frequently discard today, and what we believe today we are quite liable to discard tomorrow, possibly with a few exceptions. Nevertheless, while all the beliefs of today remain, we are so thoroughly convinced that they are true that practically nothing can change our minds. In fact, our present beliefs sometimes have such a powerful hold upon our minds that we have absolutely no desire to think differently from what we do. And what is more, those very beliefs, as a rule, refuse to be examined. It is certainly mental bondage with a vengeance when a mind dare not examine the credentials of its own belief, and is so completely under the control of its own convictions that it is unable to question their genuineness or authority. But what we want to know is what places the mind in such a condition, and also what might constitute the path to emancipation. These are great questions when we realize the fact that there are millions of minds that are more or less in such a condition. The subconscious mind, however, explains the mystery. Our convictions, that is, those things that we feel to be true, are in most instances mental expressions from the subconscious. When these expressions are very strong, they invariably color all views, desires, motives, feelings, or intentions of the outer mind. Sometimes these convictions, or subconscious expressions, are so strong that even a liberal university education will have to obey and color its idea accordingly. We frequently ask, how can that well-educated man believe as he does? The fact is that he is compelled by his own subconscious convictions to believe as he does. These convictions are so strong that they bend, twist, and color his education, so that the education itself is made a servant of mere belief, and is not infrequently compelled to use its power to prove the genuineness of that belief. But in the face of these facts, how are we to know that truth is truth? How are we to distinguish between a real principle and an opinion which is simply the reaction of some idea or belief that was previously impressed upon our minds? How are we to determine when a law is a law, and when it is simply the tendency of a strong expression from the subconscious? To know these things is highly important, because the truth is the cause of all that is good, while the untruth is the cause of all that is not good. To distinguish truth from error, we have usually depended upon logic, or upon scientific evidence. But a study of the subconscious proves that logic is not always safe, and also that scientific evidence may be so colored and modified as to prove the very opposite as to what happens to be fact. An expression from the subconscious, if very strong, can so modify the logical process that reason is literally compelled to act along certain lines only, and wholly ignore certain other lines which it considered would change the conclusion decidedly. We have any amount of this sort of reasoning going on all about us, and it is responsible for a great many false views as well as half-truths. In addition to the twisting process, which is constantly applied to logic or reason by prejudice, strong personal feelings, and contradicting subconscious convictions, there is another process originating wholly in the subconscious, which makes logic still more incompetent to prove that truth is truth. The logical process is based upon premises, and the conclusion is true only when the premises are true. If one or both of the premises are false, the conclusion will be false, even though the reasoning employed be absolutely sound in every respect. The process of logical reasoning is similar to the working out of a mathematical problem. If one of the original figures were wrong, the final answer will be wrong, regardless of the fact that the figuring be entirely correct all the way through. In logic, it is therefore necessary to have correct premises at the beginning. But how are we to know that they are correct? A strong, preconceived subconscious conviction may color or modify any premise which we may formulate, and it appear true when it is false, or vice versa. What is more, a strong subconscious conviction may influence the mind to form all of its premises so as to harmonize with the conviction, thus forcing the logical process to prove that the subconscious conviction is true, even though it may be the most impossible illusion. A great deal of this is done. In fact, there are a few minds that are absolutely free from it. Again, a great many impressions concerning the nature of life in general, and this or that in particular, may establish themselves so firmly in the subconscious that they are accepted as absolute fact, and these may be employed as fundamentals in the formulating of principles, laws, premises, and so on. Upon these fundamentals we may construct an immense system of thought, which may seem to be plausible, reasonable, and logical, and we may gain thousands of followers, even though there may not be a single truth at the bottom of the system. In this connection, we must remember that any idea which seems plausible may impress itself upon the subconscious as a fact. And since we naturally accept what comes from the subconscious, provided the subconscious expression be very strong, we will believe this plausible idea to be a fact, even though it may be nothing more than a mere illusion. It is the nature of the human mind to feel that whatever comes from the subconscious is true. That is, every expression from the subconscious feels as it were real, and what we feel to be true or real we accept as final, usually asking no questions. But we must not blame the subconscious for such phenomena. The subconscious only responds to impressions from without. The conscious mind acts, the subconscious reacts, and the two actions are always similar. When we accept an idea from another mind or from our own study simply because it seems plausible, we will permit that idea to impress itself upon the subconscious, provided it is deeply felt. Later on, that same idea will come back from the subconscious as a strong conviction, and we shall not only be forced to accept it as true, but in addition it will color all our thinking. In fact, it may become so strong that we do not care to be free from its absolute control. There are many illustrations of this very thing, as there are quite a number of people who are in such a complete bondage to the mental control of beliefs. They cherish that they actually take pride in being under such absolute control. In brief, they frequently declare, "I am completely in the hands of this system of thought, and I am glad of it." The cause of this strange state of mind is easily explained, however. The absolute slave, be he physical or mental, does not wish to be free, because if he is an absolute slave, he does not have any sufficient freedom of thought to distinguish between bondage and emancipation. In brief, he cannot appreciate freedom. Therefore, it appears to him to be something that will deprive him of the privileges he may enjoy in his bondage. He would rather endure the present state, even if that state happens to be undesirable, than risk the uncertainty of that which is not the slightest conception. There are a large number of minds in this condition. They are afraid to change their minds, because their bondage is so complete that they have not sufficient individuality or freedom of self-assertiveness to stand upon their own feet should they be called upon to do so. They may be miserable where they are, but they are wholly unable to express a desire to change. They believe what they believe because that belief has become a deep-seated subconscious habit, and their minds are completely under the control of those habits. Their habits of belief may have been formed in childhood under the strict discipline of authority for truth, or they may have changed later, accepting a new belief and permitting this new belief to sink so deeply into the subconscious that it colors all thought and prevents the mind from thinking anything which does not conform to this belief. But the question is, if there need be any truth in the belief in order that it may gain such full control over the mind, that there may be some truth in all belief is possible, though from the nature of the case the larger part of it will be untrue. We realize that any system, no matter how untrue, may gain complete supremacy in the mind and compel the mind to accept it as true. Therefore, the mere fact that our belief seems to be true proves nothing, nor does the fact that we are satisfied with our present belief prove anything in its favor. Many a serf is satisfied to be next to nothing, and many a mind knows so little that it looks upon its ignorance as a virtue. In fact, it was only a few years ago that ignorance was considered a virtue among a large percentage of people. These people, however, were not to blame. In fact, no one is directly to blame. Nevertheless, the fact that all these things exist in our very midst but adds importance to our subject. The great question before us: how are we to know the truth? That is, how are we to know the truth when we see it? Thus far, there is only one way through which we may know the truth, and that is what is called the scientific method. This method has been applied by students of the physical universe for half a century or more, and they have in that way made modern science a marvel. But the same method can be applied in any department of thought or research, and must, if we are to distinguish the truth from what is not truth. The scientific method is based upon the principle of permitting truth to demonstrate itself, or in other words, acting upon the statement, "By their fruits ye shall know them." When we proceed according to this principle, we find that truth always demonstrates itself when permitted to do so. And also, any belief which does not prove itself to be truth proves itself through the same process to be the untruth. In this age, one of the reigning desires is to find the truth. In consequence, wide-awake minds may be seen in large numbers going here and there, and everywhere in search of the precious jewel. But how many of them know what the jewel looks like? Are we sure that most of us have not passed it by 1,000 times, thinking it was something else? It has been said that all is not gold that glitters, but we can with equal propriety declare that all is not truth that dazzles the mind with the coloring of plausibility, though the average truth-seeker is entirely too prone to accept the plausible as truth without further evidence. The ideas thus accepted invariably become subconscious conviction of more or less power, and we have a repetition of the old process until a new belief becomes a habit and controls the mind as it was controlled by the habits of belief which went before. Knowing that subconscious convictions can so dominate judgment and reason that the true may appear to be false and vice versa, it is wholly unsafe to accept anything as untrue, as we have seen the fruits. We should therefore demand that every idea demonstrate its genuineness before it is made a part of our mind. No idea should be permitted to impress itself upon the subconscious until it has proved itself to be true, because the subconscious is like a fertile field. Anything will grow there if you simply drop the seed. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And the thought of the heart is invariably that thought which is rooted in the subconscious. The thoughts, ideas, desires, and convictions which enter the subconscious will wholly determine what we are to do, think, or become. Whatever enters the subconscious will express itself in the personality, and whatever we accept with implicit faith will enter the subconscious. Since every seed that is sown in the subconscious will positively bear fruit after its kind, and since what we accept as true will enter the subconscious, we cannot be too cautious with respect to what we think of as the truth, and should therefore require all ideas to prove themselves before we receive them. But here we may ask what we are to do with all those beliefs that the race has for ages looked upon as sacred. Will it be necessary to take all these beliefs out and demand that they demonstrate themselves through the scientific method to be absolutely true before we reinstate them in our minds? The answer is, this is the course we must take. All truth is sacred, and nothing is sacred unless it is the truth. The fact that we think a certain belief to be sacred does not make it so, even though it has been held sacred for 1,000 centuries. We can easily get into the habit of thinking the most ordinary illusion to be a sacred truth, and finally be compelled, controlled by that belief. If a belief is true, it will produce the fruits of the truth, which mean all good things for life here and now. And if so, it is sacred. But if it produces no fruits or produces results that are undesirable, it must be examined. It may simply be a habit of thought that possesses a sacred truth, and we want to know. Truth is for us, and if there is any idea in our minds that has all these years deceived us, we want to get rid of it at once, no matter how sacred it may have appeared in the eyes of ignorance. The fact that we have to discard a few of the old beliefs when we begin to search for the truth need not disturb us in the least. We shall not be left empty-handed. The truth is everywhere. There are millions of great truth all about us, above us, beneath us, within us, and we have the power to know them all. Therefore, we are perfectly safe in changing our minds in a few respects when we find that such changes will be conducive to a much larger understanding of the truth. To eliminate the useless will give place for that which can add more richly to the welfare and the beauty of life. Concerning the demonstration of truth, we must remember that we are living in the great eternal now, and in consequence can take interest only in those ideas that deal with the present. We cannot demonstrate anything concerning the future, therefore it is a misuse of the mind to try. It is also wrong for the same reason to fill our minds with beliefs which deal solely with future states of existence. To understand that life that we are living now is the problem, and to live this present life in the truest and most beautiful sense possible is the purpose. To fulfill that purpose we must know the truth about present existence, and must live the present life according to that truth. Aye, and here we should remember that to make the present good is to make the future better, because what is to happen in days to come will be the natural result of what we are doing now. End of chapter.